Welcome to the Live Your Purpose podcast, featuring compelling interviews with big-hearted people in the Oklahoma City metro area who are leading, creating, and innovating on purpose. Get inspired by conversations with passionate difference makers from our local community. I'm your host, Charles Gossett, life purpose coach and founder of Full Integration Coaching. On today's episode, we sit down with Alex Taussig, an encouraging advocate for our disabilities community and an empowering health coach for people of all abilities. And now, the Live Your Purpose podcast. Welcome to the Live Your Purpose podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Alex Taussig, who's a health coach and Harry Potter enthusiast living in Oklahoma City. Alex is legally blind and is passionate about amplifying and celebrating disability culture in her city. An encourager, Hufflepuff, by nature, Alex relishes the opportunity to walk alongside people of all abilities as they pursue health in all areas of life. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad to have you. And this is our very first episode, so congratulations on being the first guest ever.
Yes, I'm so excited and honored.
See, you hear that enthusiasm already, so we're off to a great start. Well, so Alex, we start this show off with a kickoff question.
Okay.
And so we have that set, and so here we go, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us. Mm-hmm. So what are the struggles and triumphs that have most shaped your life?
Yes, I would say Charles and I love to kind of, in our conversations in the past, love to just go deep real quick. So this is just in fitting with that. I would say the things that have really shaped me are my disability, my visual impairment, which I've had from birth, and my family in particular, their international background. My parents grew up as missionary kids, and so I started having international experiences going on trips with them when I was 14. I went to Nigeria then for the first time. And so lots of different things about that have really opened up my world at a young age. And I think that lots of different aspects of my disability as far as social things, but also learning a lot about independence has really shaped me. So maybe that's a bit much, but
No, that's great. Yeah. No, it won't be too much. I think that we can go there.
Yeah.
So, and on that point, we're here on location at the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yes, this is where I work as a secretary by day. So in addition to being a health coach, that's something that I do. So it worked out for us to meet here, and it's right over by the, if for those familiar with OKC, it's right over by the state capitol. So we're kind of tucked away. Not a lot of people know about us. But I don't think, Charles, you had been here before we met and interacted first.
No, that's right. This was my first time. Well, this is my second time to come here, or maybe a couple more. But the first time that I officially came and got a tour, which was pretty amazing. And I definitely suggest calling ahead for that. You know?
Yes.
Don't just come in.
Definitely.
But it really is an education. So those listening, and definitely go online and find out more about this facility. And it's right next door to the wildlife department. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you might get confused, but when you walk in, you'll know pretty quickly if you're in the right building.
Exactly. Can't get a fishing license here.
And people have tried, I imagine.
Yes, they have. So that's a pretty easy fix. When they ask for that, we say, "Oh, you're in the wrong place."
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so back to some of those events that really shaped you, that have most shaped your life. You mentioned being visually impaired from a very young age. And what are some of the key maybe memories or initial experiences you had in your life that impacted you, specifically in terms of vision?
Right. Well, in my childhood, there was a lot of work done facilitated by my parents to make sure that I am as independent as possible. That is every parent's goal for their child, but when you have a child with a disability, that really gets pushed to the forefront, and you may need to take some extra measures in terms of like education or just additional supports. And even above and beyond, like making sure, I had large print books in school, and my parents made sure to facilitate that with my teachers and things, but the whole educational system. But then also, my parents really made it a priority for me to know and meet other people who have visual impairments and other disabilities. I went to a summer camp for kids with disabilities and their siblings. I think the first time I went to Camp Barnabas, which is near Springfield, Missouri, I was 8 years old. And so that experience really shaped me, meeting other people who were like me, and meeting people who had all kinds of different abilities, who could not do, quote unquote, the things that other people could do. And so I started learning at that point that I'm not the same as everyone else, but I can do all the things that everyone else can do. And so that was just a very poignant and pointed, I guess, realization to have had at a pretty young age.
That's extremely powerful and informative, because you were, how old did you say that you were?
The first time I went to Camp Barnabas, I was 8.
8 years old, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
preteen, at those, whatever age that is, about second grade or so levels, second, third grade.
Right.
Yeah, and you were there with, now did you take any of your siblings along with you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so this
Yes.
is a real family sibling kind of approach.
Yes. And so what was so incredible about that was that I think it really helped my siblings. They split it, in the camp, they split it up, the cabins, between people who had disabilities and siblings. So for my brother and sister, they were in cabins with other people who have siblings who have visual impairments. So that's a really kind of niche role to have, and they got to experience that and kind of meet other people who were in a similar life situation even to them. So that was really impactful for them. And I think the message that it sent to me was, there is, first of all, you're not alone in your disability. There are plenty of other people who have similar struggles, but also it can be, it was summer camp. We swam, we did ropes courses, we rode horses. So it was a very empowering and encouraging environment where it was really enforced that you may have to go about it a little bit differently, but you can do anything that anyone else can do. And I mean, as I've grown up, I've kind of tested the limits of that and realized maybe there are some things that I, like we all do, maybe there are some things that I can't do or that I'm really not very good at. But those things don't have to do with my disability directly, I think. It's just more, realizing that, everyone has limits. Everyone has giftings and abilities and things like that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for really diving deep into that, because that's something that I did not know about you. I don't remember that experience coming up in any of our conversations. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really, meeting people of all different abilities. I think that's what's given me such a wide lens. As we kind of mentioned, I'm passionate about in my fancy little bio, we mentioned that I have a passion for kind of bringing the disability community together. And I think Camp Barnabas was really a proving ground, or a place where I really learned, that's proving ground isn't the right word, but where I really learned that there are so many different people with so many different types of disabilities, and really we have more in common than we have that's different. And so that really gave me a glimpse of a lot of those people, and it made me want to connect with them as I've grown up, which I think is a very unique experience.
It really is, from my point of view as well.
Yeah.
And we have talked at length and depth about your passion and your vision for working with the disability community. And we can go there now if you like, because it's a natural segue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what are some of the factors that really drove you or continue to drive you in, well, you mentioned finding more in common than we have different, but in working with the disability community as a whole, with various disabilities coming together in some way, what inspired you to do that, and what are some of the factors involved in your work?
Right. Well, I think what inspired me to do it was not having much of a community. I know I spoke about Camp Barnabas, and I was also involved in some, again, thanks to my parents, involved in some blind and visually impaired support groups as a child. So that put me in touch with more of a community. But after that, I was mainstreamed in school. So I just went to I went to Deer Creek, which was wonderful. And I did meet, obviously there are people with disabilities sprinkled everywhere if you look for them. So it wasn't that I didn't meet anyone else who had a disability, but it was more about assimilation, I think. And I don't use that to say that my identity was squashed or anything, but it just wasn't a common, I didn't meet very many other people who had disabilities. And so then when I was kind of trying to wrestle with, I think we've talked about how I would say my college experience, I went to college with this super empowered attitude that I'm just like everyone else. I can do anything that anyone else can do. And I kept that for the most part, but when I graduated, I moved back home, moved back in with my parents, and I started to, when I was back with people who knew me really well and knew my disability and how that just how that affects me and impacts me, I kind of started visiting with my parents and realized that some of the things that I had struggled with in college were due to my disability, and I didn't even realize it. And so, and I can get into what some of those things are, but the main takeaway from that is just to say that there was I was not aware of how my disability had impacted me. And so, and I have thought to myself that, well, if I was in community with other people who have disabilities, I might have more awareness, and also just a different, vibrant community to be a part of. So just, I guess I've found that really doesn't exist yet in a way that I feel really, just in a way that I want. I'm a young-ish person who I want to have fun. I want to engage with others and activities that are enjoyable, in addition to just connecting over conversation. And in the disability world, a lot of community is. These support groups are great, and these committees and things like that, but a lot of them are focused around activism, which is so important. I struggle with even saying that, because when I say, oh, I'm not interested in activism, I worry that people will think, well, I realize that's a very privileged kind of position to have, because there are a lot of people who have to campaign for their rights. They don't have a choice. They wish they had the luxury of not thinking about it, and that's where I am. That's the privilege that I have. So, but I just find that in disability spaces and communities, there's so much about activism and so much involving like employment and making our communities more accessible, which again is very important. But what I am passionate about as a social person is, how can I engage with people in a fun, social way who have disabilities? There are lots of people with lots of different identities who get to go to a club, or they get to go to some type of gathering, or there's a online space, or maybe in their workplace they work with a lot of people they interact with a lot of people who are like them, and they get to really choose that, and it's fun. I haven't had that, so I'm interested in exploring that more, and trying to create some of that community, and some positivity and some fun around, and some pride around the identity of disability. So yeah, I guess that's what I'm passionate about, and I'm very much still in the journey of figuring out what that looks like and what part I have to play in it. Let me see. It's a growing process for me. I have really walked through a lot of, it's easy to blame and shame, the community that exists now, to say, oh, you aren't meeting my needs. You aren't what I need and want you to be. But what I've kind of realized after sitting with those feelings a while is that it can be my job to help create that and foster that, and find other people who want to do the same. So
Yeah, that really brings it full circle, Alex, and thank you for sharing that, because as you started off with this this portion of our conversation, you mentioned this just doesn't exist. What you're envisioning, how you see that the disability community could be coming together, just doesn't exist. It didn't exist for you in the ways that you thought it might be able to, or that it should. And the opportunities that you saw other people with other abilities having, that you were not privy to, or didn't have access to, or just for whatever reason couldn't do that.
Right.
Those opportunities weren't there.
Right.
And along these lines, some of our listeners, or maybe many of our listeners, may not understand the various challenges that the disability community faces. One example that I wanted to bring up, just from my own experience, you invited me to Dining in the Dark, which was fantastic. And this was at, I still call it the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I don't know what the $10 word is. Yeah. Western Heritage something something.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a formal dinner, and we were served, and it was, we were blindfolded. All the guests at the table were blindfolded, and then you were our host, our table host. And so the experience, the idea was for people like me, I guess we could say more sighted people.
Able-bodied people.
Thank you. Able-bodied. So I'm learning as I go too.
Yeah.
So able-bodied, I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
People can experience what it's like to be visually impaired while you're eating, and I'm telling you, that was a unique experience.
Yes.
It was. I needed all the help I could get with your guidance, and then also the sense of isolation, of like, what are other people doing? I can't see their body language. I don't know where people are at. I don't know what their emotions are. I don't know what they're their facial expressions are.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad that you did come to that. And honestly for me, that event itself is so important because that is a glimmer of what I would like to see. I would like to see people engage with disability in ways that have nothing to do with charity, or I mean, I guess technically it was a fundraiser, but it was a fundraiser for the organization who sponsored it. So maybe not so much charity, but when we think of disability, often we think of people who we need to pity, or people who, we think of Tiny Tim, from Charles Dickens,
Right.
or we think of, at the best, we probably think of people who we just don't know what to say to, and that happens sometimes, even for me too. Disability is a huge spectrum. I've met people who, not just, my best friend is a wheelchair user, so I'm not at all uncomfortable with wheelchairs. But when you meet someone who uses a device to speak, has the, I guess, simulated speech, or I don't even know what that word is exactly, but someone who doesn't have the use of their own voice, just who has a very maybe severe disability, you could say. That's not in my daily life. I don't know anyone like that. And so I'm on the alert, like many people probably are around lots of people with disabilities, of just feeling like, oh, I don't want to offend them. I don't want to say anything wrong. I don't want to, if I talk to them, are they going to think that I'm just talking to them because they have a disability? And
Totally. Yeah.
so those anxieties can be real for me too, but it's important to get over them, because dining in the dark just provides a great opportunity for us to maybe learn a little bit about how people with one particular disability navigate the world, but also just a way to engage with disability that is so positive and fun and inviting. Those are not things that happen often, in my experience. And also, it's for people. It was put on by people who have disabilities, which is another big issue. That there's lots of able-bodied people like yourself are wonderful, but when they are running the show of disability events and disability organizations, it's not very empowering for people with disabilities. Certainly we need everyone's help, and a lot of these things are a team effort. But it would have been very disappointing to me to show up to an event like Dining in the Dark and find out that there weren't any people with disabilities or people with visual impairments on that board of the organization. By the way, it's called the Heartland Council for the Blind. I should give them a little plug. Yeah.
Heartland Council for the Blind.
Yes.
Look them up.
Yes. But anyway, so they were involved, and that was very empowering and meaningful. And by the way, I was the blind dining guide, so I didn't have to wear a blindfold, and thank goodness, because when people who have no vision or have very, very limited vision eat, they use a clock system, which to say, your potatoes are at 12 o'clock, your meat is at 6 o'clock. I have enough vision that I don't eat that way. So it would have been a learning curve even for me. And I think that's just important to say, because there's such a spectrum in the disability community. It's huge, even among people who have the same disability. It's a spectrum. So that's just, I think I'm grateful that we have this idea of the spectrum thanks to autism. You know, a lot of people know about, you know, severely autistic people, and then there are people who have very high functioning autism, you know, and so visual impairment is the same. It's a broad spectrum. So anyway, that was just a great event and represents a lot of what I want to do.
Right. And so those that are listening, that are keying in, this has been like maybe an educational portion of our conversation, reducing the stigma for certain, recognizing that there's a full spectrum of disability. So these are individuals with very unique living situations that they're dealing with, and they're all on the spectrum. And it turns out when we really look at, this is me talking, when we look at the full scope of humanity, we're all on a spectrum of some kind.
Absolutely.
I agree. In general, globally thinking, we have more in common than we have different.
Exactly.
And we have differences, you know? And we have limitlessness in our lives, but we also have limits. We have, you know, gifts and abilities, and we have things that maybe we're not so great at, you know?
Right.
And these types of conversations pull that out in hopefully a positive and purposeful way.
Yeah.
That folks that are listening in can say, oh, have I got an idea for Alex?
Yeah.
And if you do, guess what? At the end of the show, we're going to give you some ways that you can get in touch with her and follow along and maybe combine with her for some of these ideas.
Yeah. And I would also just say that, you know, disability is, it's something that people in my life can, and probably you know, if you who are listening try, you know, there's lots of, you may not have a disability yourself, but maybe you can relate to feeling isolated. Maybe you can relate to feeling disempowered. Maybe you can relate to feeling like you're the only one who deals with XYZ, or you have a problem that feels very unique and huge, and you know, maybe even feel like you know, look different than everyone else, or whatever the case may be. There are so many different ways that we can relate to each other. And it's important. I guess the two-pronged thing of kind of highlighting the disability community is, you know, for one thing, I want us to be seen and celebrated for our unique perspective and our unique lives that we have, and to not ignore disability. But I also want I want people to find connections and how they can relate, even if they don't have, as I'm gonna get ready to drop the $5 word for my my vision problem. It's called, I was born with bilateral optic nerve hypoplasia. I learned it when I was 6 because I thought it was so cool. I thought, that's a $5 word that I want to hang on to.
It's a change, yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah, I encourage people that even if you don't think that you can relate, you probably can. And you probably, maybe the person in the wheelchair that you feel uncomfortable talking to, maybe they have the same favorite movie as you. Maybe they like the same kind of ice cream that you do. You know, you could be having an ice cream pizza party with them, and, you know, and you're not, because you won't talk to them.
You're missing out on an ice cream pizza party.
Exactly.
It's just waiting to happen.
Yeah.
I believe
it. So yeah, I hope that encourages people, and it's definitely getting out of your comfort zone. So there's also no shame in feeling uncomfortable, because we all deal. I mean, like I said, I deal with that myself sometimes. When I mentioned earlier being uncomfortable with somebody with a disability that I haven't interacted with before or seen before, you know, but it's worth it. It's worth it, because connection is always better than the opposite, than disconnection. I believe, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be best friends with everyone, but it's worth it to try.
Right. And
That's how I feel.
you've given several really specific, simple ways to begin those conversations or those dialogues with people. And so just attending events that that are going on in the community, seeing people in public spaces and not turning away. And I think we human beings have a lot of positive intentions. Most of us want to find ways to connect,
Right.
versus ways to separate ourselves.
Right.
We have both halves.
Yeah.
Each one of us wants to do a little bit of both. But I think more often than not, people want to find a way to get along with other people and understand who they are.
I would also add something that's been extremely helpful to me is following people with disabilities on Instagram and Facebook, social media. There are YouTubers, there are all kinds of people who are talking about their experiences, and there's people with invisible illnesses, and there are people with chronic pain. There's so many ways to learn and to grow, and the reason I like following people on social media is because it gives me a glimpse into that person's world, and it also shows that person in the way they are expressing themselves, and they are showing you exactly how they want to be seen. So that is just so empowering, and honestly, it may not be, getting out in your community and doing something, but at the same time, it is exposing yourself to new ideas and new perspectives. So, and that's something that is very easy to do. Look up some hashtags, hashtag disability pride, hashtag disabled and cute. There are so many of them. So I would, that's a great way that we can all, and myself included, get involved. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's so important in our times, the social media aspect. And I follow along too with some folks in the disability community. And when you read some of the posts, and there's a few that I follow along with that are excellent writers, and they just have paragraphs of what their life is like. And it really gives me a window into the narrative of what their story is like. What is it like to live in, for example, a body that has betrayed them, or that betrays them more and more every day.
Right.
And yet they continue on, and some days they don't want to, and some days this and that happens. And you just read about what it's like to experience that life. And it's really a transformative experience to have that kind of even social media relationship with someone else. It can be impactful. It has been for me. So another great tip.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why, I'm very active on social media, and a lot of that is just because I want to share my life with people, just in general, people who I'm close to, friends and family. But I also have a lot of pride in realizing that I'm friends with people on Facebook who, I use it as a networking tool. So I don't know everyone personally, in person, who I have on my friends list. And giving people the opportunity to see someone who is loving life and very proudly has a disability is not lost on me. Getting the opportunity to express some of my nuanced experiences is something that I highly value and see as a privilege, because if I don't talk about it, if people with disabilities don't talk about it, then people won't know. And I say that again, that has a lot of privilege, because there are a lot of people who in the disability community. So I do want to say that not everyone wants to, and not everyone has to, and not everyone should. It's a joy for me, so I do it. But and there are a lot of people who don't have the literal energy to do that. It's all they can do to have people have loved ones in their lives, and hold down a job if that's something that they can do, and that takes up all their energy, and they don't have any for social media, and that's valid as well. But because I want to use it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
what's working best for you. You're playing to your passions, your strengths,
Right.
your vision, your really mission, an evolving mission
Yeah.
in the community and beyond.
Yes.
Which we can go there next, because you also have some cool stuff going on with health coaching.
Yes.
And so did you want to talk a little bit about that and the
Yeah.
kind of work that you're up to there?
Definitely. So yeah, I mentioned that I have been very active on social media, and the reason for that is because I am a health coach. It should have also been mentioned in my, defining moments when we were talking about that at the beginning of the podcast. In 2016, I embarked on a weight loss journey. I was weighing in at over 300 pounds before that point. And I started working with a health coach, and also using some very specific nutrition to fuel my body, and tools to fuel and create new pathways in my mind as well. The company that I coach for is called Optavia, and so I started that journey in 2016, and now I am, I'm literally half the person I was, which made such a huge impact on me. I had always been overweight, even as a child. It was something that I struggled with, and just continued to battle it until I was 27 when I finally found the right thing and started pursuing health. But so I guess I should say that when I started work as a health coach, the company asked me to, asks all their coaches, which is pretty common. They wanted to see people living out loud via social media, because that's kind of the best, not advertisement, but that's the best way to see, for other people to see, hey, this is a solution that could be effective for me. And so so as I started kind of sharing more on social media because of this, I really uncovered a lot of, that's where all the disability stuff really came from. I have trouble sometimes with circling thoughts that I pick up and don't know where to go with. But you mentioned the health coaching, and so it took me about 2 years to lose the weight, because, like I said, I lost half a person, and at some point, my health coach, who I talked to about once a week, kept telling me, Alex, you would be really good at this. You'd be really good at this. And I thought, well, I don't have time. I don't know. I didn't want to be a salesperson. I didn't want to be peddling something to people. I just did not feel good about that. But my health coach, Amber, really helped open my mind to it. And she said, I am an encourager. I know that about myself. That's something that I kind of can't help doing, is to encourage others. But anyway, so what made me decide to try it was actually, this was a year and a half into my health journey, and I said, maybe this would be a great tool for my personal development. I just got an inkling, which I will say, as a person of faith, I say inkling means, the Holy Spirit, that said to me, this would be really helpful for you to grow personally, and maybe you could find more time than you think that you have, and that has turned out to be true. So, and even all these passions I have for the disability community didn't even really get expressed, or I had definitely thought about some different things, but my having my health, my physical health, my ability to get out of bed in the morning without my knees hurting, but also my emotional and mental health of clarity and passion and drive has all been given to me, and so from there I've kind of said, okay, how can I use this? And so I want to help other people find that same, well, not the same, but find their own journey. Weight is we talked about isolation. I felt very isolated in my disability, but growing up with so much weight to lose, I felt very isolated by that. I felt like no one else in my family struggles with that the way that I do. So I just, I felt very alone and very helpless, and like I didn't have any discipline, didn't have any self-discipline, didn't have anything that I could use to make a change, and so my health coach walking alongside me is and the larger community that I've become involved in has really empowered me and showed me the gifts of vulnerability and accountability. Those were things that I was someone who could always, I'm pretty good at asking questions and at being interested in other people and encouraging other people. And when I was in a place that wasn't as emotionally healthy, I often used that as a smokescreen to, people love being asked about themselves, so it's really easy to direct conversation. And, I was in a place where I didn't actually want to talk about myself. So, and I knew how to make it so that would not happen. And so I had a lot of growing to do in vulnerability, being able to share with people really where I was struggling and accept grace both from other people and for myself. That's still a huge journey for me. I'm not there yet, but this has really helped me take some steps in a positive direction. And so I just get excited about offering that to other people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
By going through your own journey, from what I'm hearing, you've been there. Somebody walked alongside with you. You responded to the nudge of the Holy Spirit. You were listening deeply to the vocational call on your life. And you pursued this despite the challenges that it might represent, despite some of your own beliefs about your capacity to do it, etc. And from what I'm hearing and what I see on social media all the time, and from everybody's comments about your posts, you are living it. You are living out loud. You are walking the talk. You're talking the walk. You're doing both. And and what I've learned, at least in my own life, is I never have it. There's moments where I'm like, oh, there, it's all together, and then 5 minutes later, because things are always changing. We always have something else to learn. There's always something to work on. But there's also this this zone of rest and peace and wholeness. And what I hear you is speaking out of that place of purpose. That's you're really responding to the call in your life. So on that point, if there are people that are listening and they're looking for a health coach, an encourager, somebody in the disability community, a great person to know and just be influenced by, how can they follow along with you, Alex? How can they reach out to you?
Right. Okay. Well, I would say you can definitely friend me on Facebook. My name is just Alex Taussig, Taussig, And, if you want to drop me a little message to say that you heard about me through the Live Your Purpose podcast, that would be great so that I know who you are. And you can also follow along with my journey on Instagram. My handle is authentically _ Alex. So there you go. Anyway, maybe we can provide links to something, or we'll type it out so that when you look at it, you know.
It'll be in the show notes. You can count on it. But I want people to be able to hear it as well.
That's great. Show notes. Charles is on top.
I'm on it. They don't exist yet. And I'm hoping this recording is working. Every once in a while, I just see flat lines on my computer screen, and then all of a sudden they reappear. So we're going to trust the process here.
Yes.
One final, just random, but not so random note or question. Switchfoot.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Switchfoot. What's your favorite Switchfoot song today?
Oh my goodness. Today. I probably will go with the song Always. It's on their Hello Hurricane album, and there's I thought of it just because there's a line that really spoke to me. I was thinking about today that he says, every hallelujah, every breath is a second chance. And for a perfectionist like me, that's really important to know that I can start over. I don't have to wait another hour or another day or another minute. Just every breath is a chance to start again. So
that is a wonderful place to leave this. And John Foreman, if you're listening, I think your band is coming to town. So invite us backstage, okay?
Yep.
All right. Alex, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Live Your Purpose podcast. I hope you've been inspired by my conversation with today's guest. If you like what you hear, please share with your social networks and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Charles Gossett, life purpose coach and founder of Full Integration Coaching. To learn more about the life coaching, public speaking, and retreat services that I offer, visit fullintegrationcoaching.com. And you can follow along with me on Facebook and Instagram at Full Integration Coaching. Until next time, remember, you were meant to live on purpose. Start living yours today.